If you love cinnamon and you love cake, this is a twist on the ever famous Dutch apple cake, but using plums from our allotment. Let me walk you through how to make it. This is actually a recipe that is detailed on our kettlewhistle.com website. Here you can find the in-depth description and also the ingredients as listed above. Otherwise, the ingredients and the method are in the description below. So let's walk through the ingredients together. First off, we've got 125 grams of plain flour, and to that we're going to add 2¼ teaspoons of baking powder. Sounds really specific, but actually it's the perfect level to help it rise and become a really good cake. And to that we're going to add 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and again we're going to put that in with the flour and sift that a bit later on. Next up we've got 2 whole eggs, again medium or large, whatever you've got to hand. Got 75 millilitres of milk. I'm using whole cow's milk at the moment, but you could use whatever you have to hand. And to that we're going to add 1 teaspoon of good quality vanilla extract. I'm going to add that to the milk. It kind of helps with the whole mixing with the butter later. Here we have 85 grams of unsalted butter, and I've cubed it and sliced it a little bit so it'll melt even easier. And then here we got 175 grams of caster sugar. Last up we've got about 5 plums. You can substitute these for apples, pears, raspberries, etc. At the moment we've got loads of plums on the allotment, so we don't want to see them go to waste. Before we start, let's preheat the oven to 180 degrees C fan. I always prefer to start by kind of chopping the plums and getting them out of the way. You can see here that what I'm doing is I'm just splitting the plum in half and then twisting it, actually pulling out the stone. The actual best way to get the stone is just to score around the outside, just being careful of your fingers, and then effectively you can prise that apart, and as you can see just pull the stone up and out. Try not to cut yourself on the knife in your hand. Slice the plums into the same sort of size as a Terry's chocolate orange piece really. You want it thick enough that it'll have some structure to it, but thin enough that it will actually sink to the bottom. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to melt the butter and the milk in a pan. So you're going to put the butter in first, add the milk, got the vanilla essence in there as well, and we're going to gently warm that. Be careful not to burn it, put it on a really low temperature, just gently move it around until it's all combined. Next thing is sugar into a bowl with the eggs. What we're going to do here is we're going to whisk these together. It's going to take about 5 minutes that we're going to whisk this for. The idea is that we want to get this like a really mousse-like, really thick consistency. So you can see here that obviously where we start it's really quite loose, it then progresses to something like this, which is where it's combined, and then eventually what it will do is it will then turn into a nice thick mousse just like this. It takes about 5 minutes. Then what we're going to do while we're continuing to whisk, we're going to add the melted butter and milk in little batches just to get it all nicely combined. Put the baking powder, the cinnamon in with the flour, and we're going to sieve it in. This is the point where I realised that my sieve was a little bit too small, but hey ho. So what we're going to do is we're going to sieve that in. Want to get as much air in there as possible to make this a really nice rise to the cake. What we're going to do now is we're going to gently fold in the flour into the batter mixture. The idea here is to ensure that we don't knock any of the air out from all that whisking that we did earlier. You'll have the odd little clump of flour in here. It's not the end of the world. It kind of sorts itself out when it bakes. Just try and combine it as best as you can. And then you'll see here that all these lovely little bubbles, that's the kind of the baking powder and the air we put in. We really want to keep those. It's going to make the cake super light. And what we're going to do, so we're going to gently pour into our buttered tin. Again, try not to knock too much of the air out when you're doing this. One thing you'll notice is that it doesn't look that thick, but as we add the plums you'll start to see, just kind of scatter them on top and you'll see them start to sink. That's exactly what we want, and the cake's going to rise beautifully. I scatter a tablespoon of sugar over the top. It just helps with the like a nice little crust when it's all baked. Initially what we're going to do is we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes because we're at 180 degrees at the moment, and those 10 minutes are the perfect opportunity to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Check out the kettlewhistle.com website where there's loads of other recipes and loads of other interesting articles on there too. After those 10 minutes are passed, set the timer for 20 minutes, and we're going to reduce the temperature down to about 160 degrees if you've got a fan oven. Other temperatures are lifted here at the side. Now here we are, we can just get this out and check, quickly ignoring the dirty oven. And you can see there it has a lovely kind of crust on the top, that's a lot of the sugar, and you'll see it's pulled away from the sides a little bit and gone quite golden. If we get that out of the oven, by the way, I use these meat mitts, not sponsored or anything, but they're great for doing this sort of thing. Now if you start to look here, you'll see that around the edges it would kind of come away from the tin. That's exactly what we want to see. It shows that it's kind of cooked from the outside. In the middle it's still going to be super soft and gooey, and as you see, if we touch it you can see it's almost like liquid, but you'll see it kind of cracks, and that's kind of the sugar on the top. You know, that it kind of gives a really nice texture to the cake, and we'll talk about that later. Now gently score around the outside between the tin and the actual cake, otherwise you'll never get the thing out when you try and pop the bottom off. If you haven't got a tin like this where you can pop the bottom off, then you know, a baking parchment or something like that would work equally as well, and you can just kind of lift it out and pull it out with that. Now what I'm going to do with the wonderful magic of editing, you're going to see me pop this out without dropping the tin, and popping that on the side there. So now we're ready to kind of cut this into whatever kind of shape you like. I like these kind of a bite-sized rectangular shape. That seems the best. Anything bigger and you're just piling on the calories. You're best to use a really sharp knife here, because actually the cake it's quite easy to squish. So as you're cutting, you kind of want to cut through the cake rather than kind of squash it, and then you can start cutting it into kind of bite-sized rectangles. And then here you can actually see the cake has obviously risen quite a lot through the baking. It's quite a nice kind of thickness, and you can actually see the plums at the bottom. They've kind of sunk to the bottom, and it's like almost like an upside down pineapple cake kind of effect. But it's a really nice, fluffy, kind of aerated cake with like a nice little crumb at the top. It's absolutely delicious. So there we have it, perfect with a nice cup of coffee. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, it really does help the channel. We'd also love to hear your feedback, so please comment below with any suggestions on how we can make this better. Check out the website, thekettlewhistle.com, got loads of other recipes and other interesting stuff on there. And our Instagram page for daily updates from the allotment and the kitchen. I'll put all the links in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, see you soon.